Everything changes in a matter of seconds. I mean, literally seconds. One moment, the confetti is raining down on the stadium turf, the Lombardi Trophy is being hoisted into the night sky, and you are the undisputed, unquestioned kings of the NFL. You're at the absolute mountaintop. But the very next moment, the vultures start circling. Welcome to NFL Nexus, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the ruthless, high-stakes aftermath of the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl LX victory. We're going to break down exactly what happened when the cameras turned off. But before we pull back the curtain on this master plan, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and seriously consider supporting our deep dive content by becoming a channel member. It helps us keep bringing you these intense breakdowns.
So think about this. How do you survive losing a Super Bowl MVP? Historically speaking, winning a championship is supposed to cement a dynasty, right? It validates your entire system. It binds a locker room together forever. But in the modern, hyper-competitive landscape of the National Football League, hoisting that trophy, it puts a giant, flashing, unavoidable target directly on your back. The Seahawks faced an absolute crisis the exact second their championship parade ended in downtown Seattle. We've seen dynasties completely crumble for way less. Yet, as you'll see, their calculated, cold-blooded response behind closed doors has been nothing short of a cinematic masterclass in roster management.
Section 1. The Super Bowl Exodus.
Let's rewind to February 2026. The Seahawks conquer the league in an absolutely grueling matchup in Santa Clara against the Patriots. It was the pinnacle of professional football, the highest of highs. But as the champagne dried up and the offseason officially opened, disaster struck with terrifying speed. The euphoria of victory just evaporated. It was instantly replaced by a massive, agonizing exodus of elite talent. Their start running back, Kenneth Walker III, the man who literally carried the offense and secured the Super Bowl MVP trophy, he packed his bags. And he didn't just leave for any team. He signed with the Kansas City Chiefs, directly arming one of Seattle's most dangerous ASC rivals. No way, right? The blow to the fan base was visceral. You could feel the air get sucked out of the room. But the bleeding didn't stop on the turf. The front office, the very architects of this championship roster, was ruthlessly raided. Rival owners brought out their checkbooks, and key executives Nolan Teasley and Trent Kirchner just vanished, leaving for the Minnesota Vikings.
Now you have to look at the contrast between the public panic and the private strategy, because it could not have been starker. The national sports media painted this picture of a franchise in absolute freefall. They saw a team bleeding an MVP and top-tier executives without a single splashy free agency signing to stop the hemorrhaging. Critics were screaming for big names. They demanded aggressive spending to replace all that lost production. But inside the dark film rooms and the locked executive suites of the Seahawks facility, there was no panic. Zero. There was only a cold, methodical orchestration of internal replacements. Instead of resetting the market with bloated, desperate contracts, the front office began assembling a highly specialized committee of running backs, and they started elevating deeply ingrained front office loyalists. The sports world called it a blunder of massive proportions. The Seattle Brass, they simply called it the plan.
Section 2. The Backfield Master Plan. So you might be wondering, why on earth would you let a Super Bowl MVP walk out the door at the absolute peak of his career? Well, the standoff between Kenneth Walker's representation and general manager John Schneider was one of the most intense, high-stakes negotiations of the entire offseason. And here's the thing, it wasn't just about the salary cap hits or the guaranteed money, it was a fundamental clash of culture. Walker demanded top-end, elite running back money, which, fair enough, but more importantly, he demanded the solo spotlight. He was reluctant to split first-string reps, and for a player with a fresh Super Bowl ring and an MVP trophy on his mantle, demanding to be the absolute focal point of the offense makes sense. But the Seahawks' offensive philosophy is built on a non-negotiable system. It demands split reps. It absolutely requires a shared load to keep every ball carrier violently efficient and physically fresh into those deep, freezing weeks of January. Paying Walker meant abandoning the very cultural system that brought them the Lombardi Trophy in the first place. Schneider refused to flinch. He let the MVP walk.
As the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft unfolded, the tension in that Seattle war room was palpable. You could cut it with a knife. The clock is ticking down, the fan base is practically begging on social media for a headline-grabbing veteran trade to fill the void. Instead, John Schneider wielded the 32nd overall pick like a scalpel. He completely bypassed the temptation of a panic buy and zeroed in on a highly specific piece of draft capital, Notre Dame rookie Jadarian Price. And let's be clear about this, the 32nd pick wasn't used to find a direct one-for-one clone of Kenneth Walker. It was used to secure the foundational cornerstone of a completely redesigned, entirely new offensive backfield.
This is where it gets like a giant puzzle.
The philosophy shifted from relying on one transcendent superstar to deploying a specialized, highly tactical three-headed monster. Every back in this newly constructed room serves a distinct, lethal purpose. First, you have Jadarian Price. He is the Lightning. He brings a terrifyingly explosive, alert energy to the turf. His burst off the line of scrimmage is elite, and he's already been dominating first-team reps in minicamp. Then there's George Holani, the third-year veteran. He is the ultimate safety valve. He's a highly efficient playmaker who excels as a pass catcher out of the backfield, but perhaps absolutely crucial to this whole operation, he's an absolute brick wall in pass blocking. When a blitzing linebacker is coming in hot on a crucial third down, Holani is the guy you want stepping up. And finally, rounding out the trio is Emmanuel Wilson, stepping into the role of the pure downhill power back. He is the human battering ram required for those gritty short yardage and goal line situations. I want you to consider the number 496. When analysts questioned if Seattle had enough raw power left on the roster to grind out tough yards in the fourth quarter, they completely overlooked Emmanuel Wilson's tape. Last season, Wilson quietly racked up 496 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns on just 125 carries. To put that into perspective, if you turn on the film, you see him routinely absorbing contact behind the line of scrimmage and just driving his legs to bulldoze defensive tackles for extra yardage. This sneaky good production proves that the brute force required for this offensive scheme was already sitting quietly on the depth chart. It is a perfectly balanced economical division of labor. It completely bypasses the need to pay superstar, market-resetting prices, and it keeps everyone fresh.
Section 3. Waiting for reinforcements.
Now, as crazy as it sounds, this current running back room is incredibly deep, but it's actually operating without its most dangerous, terrifying weapon. We have to go back to the divisional round. Picture this. The Seahawks are unleashing an absolute 41-6 demolition upon the San Francisco 49ers. The crowd is deafening. The momentum is unstoppable. And then, in the first half, a devastating pop. Zach Charbonnet goes down. The entire stadium falls completely silent as trainers rush the field. It was a brutal torn ACL. It was a massive physical sacrifice made right in the middle of their championship run. Charbonnet underwent complex reconstructive surgery immediately following the Super Bowl in February. And right now, miles away from the media spotlight and the talking heads, he is enduring grueling, lonely rehab sessions in the shadows. But he's already demonstrating remarkable progress. He's executing sharp athletic movements during minicamp, though to be fair, the medical staff is strictly keeping him out of pads for now.
The internal debates between the coaching staff and the medical team over this have been intense. Head coach Mike McDonald publicly hinted that a Week 1 return could theoretically be possible, kind of teasing the fan base, but the actual locked-in internal strategy reveals a remarkable level of organizational discipline. They are forcing patience. Step 1 requires pushing through the grueling minicamp rehab. Step 2, and this is the hardest part, is entirely bypassing the immense temptation of a Week 1 return on September 9th. Step 3 is the endgame here. They plan to unleash a completely fresh, fully recovered Zach Charbonnet right in the middle of the season. They are actively choosing long-term late-season dominance over the immediate gratification of a September headline. And by doing so, they are virtually eliminating the catastrophic risk of re-injury. It's a long game, and they are playing it perfectly.
Section 4. Rebuilding the Brain Trust.
All right, let's shift gears from the turf to the boardroom, because the high-stakes chess match of NFL team building truly happens behind closed doors. And this offseason, Seattle's front office felt like the victim of a literal corporate espionage thriller. The Minnesota Vikings aggressively targeted and essentially raided Seattle's brain trust. First, they lured away assistant general manager Nolan Teasley, handing him the absolute keys to their franchise as their new general manager. Then, they poached Trent Kirchner, a man who had served as Seattle's VP of player personnel for 7 years and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of their internal draft boards. They took him to be their assistant GM. And they didn't stop there. They dug even deeper to extract highly valued pro scout Azam Kapadia. It was a calculated, devastating strike. They practically stole the very minds that conceptualized the Super Bowl roster in the first place.
So what do you do when your front office gets gutted? General Manager John Schneider's countermove was swift, but it completely defied conventional NFL wisdom. Instead of panicking, conducting nationwide interviews, and hiring flashing outside executives just to appease the media, he quietly promoted 6 internal loyalists. He essentially sealed the building. Look at the 2 men elevated to the critical assistant GM roles. Matt Berry is an absolute institution within that facility. He has been grinding in the scouting department since 2008. That actually predates John Schneider's own arrival by 2 years. Then there is Willie Schneider. His journey is the ultimate testament to the internal pipeline.
He didn't just parachute into a high-level job, no. He started at the absolute bottom as an intern, grinding through endless hours of college tape in dark film rooms, eventually fighting his way all the way up to pro scouting director. By elevating these specific minds, the Seahawks are insulating themselves. They are surrounding themselves with executives who already bleed the organization's distinct culture.
The underlying philosophy of this entire offseason is perfectly captured in the architect's own words. Listen to this. I'm excited to be able to promote from within to maintain the culture and continuity in the personnel department. Now, that isn't just standard executive speak. It is a strict, unwavering adherence to a closed-circuit ecosystem of talent. Schneider is definitively proving that systemic continuity is the single most valuable currency in professional football. You do not need to look outside for saviors when you have spent a decade building an absolute factory of evaluation and talent development right inside your own walls.
Section 5. The ultimate offseason gamble. When you step back and look at the macro perspective of this offseason, two entirely different realities emerge. It's wild. In the public sphere, the loud sports media talking heads are screaming about a disorganized team paralyzed by free agency, bleeding its absolute best talent, and stubbornly refusing to adapt. But when you strip away all that noise, the internal reality is something much colder and much more fascinating. It is a ruthless, calculated masterclass in reloading from within. The front office is completely, unequivocally trusting their draft evaluations, their offensive system, and their internal scouts to replicate championship production. They are literally betting their jobs and their historical legacy on the belief that the shield is stronger than the sword.
So, the defining tension of the upcoming season boils down to one massive thematic question. Will the system triumph over the individual superstar? Can a meticulously drafted committee of specialized running backs and a front office populated entirely by internally promoted loyalists truly replace the sheer unadulterated star power of a Super Bowl MVP and veteran executives? It is the ultimate historical debate of structured, disciplined team building versus the reliance on isolated elite talent. Drop down into the comments right now and let us know what you think. Seriously, I want to hear your take. Will the system hold up, or will the loss of Walker be the crack that breaks the entire dam?
Well, the good news is we won't have to rely on theories or debate much longer. September 9th, Week 1 against the New England Patriots. The lights come on, and we get the grand reveal of Seattle's ultimate gamble. Will they stumble out of the gate, looking completely lost without their familiar offensive anchor, or will this calculated internal master plan prove exactly why they are the reigning heavyweights of the league? Thanks for diving deep into the Seahawks master plan with us here on NFL Nexus. If you enjoyed this explainer, make sure to like the explainer, subscribe to the channel, and seriously consider becoming a channel member to support deep dive, documentary-style content exactly like this. We will see you in the next one.